What are you reading right now?
Um, do you know what? Unfortunately, I don't get time to read for pleasure a lot of the time. I read a lot for research.
But there is some pleasurable
It is,
reward from that.
yeah. So at the minute I'm reading it's probably I've already read it, but I'm going back on it. And it's a book on Kwame Nkrumah. And it's called The Father of Nationalism. Because I'm doing a play around Pan-Africanism. So I'm reading a lot around all these kind of Pan-African activists. So it's just a lot of research. But it's really fun because I think one thing I really love actually, which I hope kind of comes across like in the play, is that we have this idea of these icons. But really what I'm interested in is the human underneath that icon status and like the flawed aspects of who they are. Because if you're always sort of telling people that, these Nelson Mandela's or the Kwame Nkrumah is like they are like these kind of unattainable goals, then when do we get our next generation of activists? But what we really need to see actually is that they did these great things, but were also really human and terribly flawed. Most of them actually, like just a little bit. Like, sometimes
Yeah,
read the full biography. Don't just read what
yeah,
they did. Read the
yes.
full biography because they
Yeah.
do some foul things, but
I definitely agree with you on that one. And I think one of the things that I worry about in terms of isms, like Pan-Africanism, Afrofuturism, um, each one of in itself is quite really good and as a philosophy, as a concept on its own. But I think there's a certain romanticization of the past that is
yeah,
quite alarming. That makes it seem as if the people who are living now are not doing anything, like we're lazy or we don't know what we're about. And also, when people make mistakes, we're quick to anger. It's only the ones that are actually doing the work that is really needed, and
mm,
um, and more forgiving for those that have been continuously transgressing against us.
yeah, yeah.
you know,
I think
um,
we always have to look at it like in relation to like the society that we're given and what are the rules of this kind of society, so when we look at like the conversations around, kind of so the play is looking at like the fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester in 1945, and you're looking at kind of post, World War II. Where is the empire at that state? Where exactly is kind of Africa at that point, right? That's a very particular time, right? Certain things are kind of happening. We're looking like that evolution of imperialism and the fall of kind of the empire and like the beginning of like the decolonization of Africa. Right now, when we think about like the function of like unity and kind of Pan-Africanism, we're also having to look at like how did imperialism evolve into near imperialism, right? We don't necessarily kind of have like, British troops on the ground, we don't have that. But what we have actually is imperialism within our policies, right? We have it existing in our healthcare system. We have it existing in like countries, specific kind of African countries, being in debt after debt after debt. That's what we're dealing with, right? So when we think about like unifying and we're thinking about kind of like organizing, it's in relation to that, not in relation to what was happening post World War II, not what was happening in the 80s. We have to think about it in response to the kind of the times that we're in. So the way that we mobilize is going to be different. If we're thinking about, the rise in like kind of, technology and kind of social media, we have to consider that as a tool of uprising, right? The previous generation may not necessarily kind of see value in that because that's not their time. This is our time. This is how a lot of people are getting kind of information. If you're thinking about a group of, activists and kind of scholars descending onto Manchester in 1945, that was massive for them.
yeah.
200 people from across, Africa and the Caribbean and America, that's massive for them.
Mhm.
But in one post, I can get more than 200 people. Do you see? So it just functions differently. So I think we have to
Mhm.
just think about a lot of like these isms and how they work and
Mhm.
allow an evolution of thought, and how these isms are applied.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember having a conversation with someone recently where they were talking about how with the advent of social media and the collapsing of borders in terms of conversation amongst people from different geographical spaces or even different contexts, we see a rise in social media activism. And there were some people were actually rubbishing that and saying, well, it's very easy to just create a Twitter post. It's very easy to just post on Instagram and be with the people. But what are the practical things that a person can do online? I mean, offline, instead of just doing most of the work online. But I was also thinking that, yes, it just looks like it's just a click. But I think if you're also using the square that you're occupying, whether it's on Zoom or on Instagram or on Twitter, to bring light to certain issues and concepts that you care about, I don't think it's anything to be sneezed at. Of course, some people will do it just to be one with the people and show that they're down with with others. But I think each and every platform that we have to use it to serve the voices that speak to what we care about. And but like you're saying, but also even just thinking in terms of thought and how it has evolved and how certain injustices have morphed into a different kind of injustice that is probably more sophisticated than one that was quite blatantly in your face, so
I think what's difficult about social media is that it's become a level playing field. If you're having debates in academic spaces, you're having debates with academics and people who are engaging in that space. You're not kind of getting like your random kind of Joe blogs off the street being in that space. That space is well more curated. The internet is not curated at all. So the issue is, even if I have a really, important and like socially kind of conscious, a politically kind of conscious thought in the internet, it can very easily sit beside by something that's really dumb. That's just the reality. It can do. So it can just get lost like in the myriad of all the other tweets that are existing, right? So it's like, so you have to figure out like, well, how do I guess with the best tools that I have, engage in far more fruitful conversations, because we know sending out a tweet means that it's just going to get lost in all of the other tweets. But what can I do alongside that? So I think having social media didn't necessarily mean that we suddenly eradicate like actually mobilizing in person and offline. It means that we can just do that and that together. So you utilize all of the skills that you have, because of course then you get like loads of like just keyboard warriors, and it's like, okay, great, but I think what we've had to do as well, and like kind of like around like the response to kind of like the George Floyd murder, is that we have to learn about the different types of activism and what kind of activist are you, because not everybody is going to be on social media. I'm not massive on social media, like especially when it's about like being kind of political. It's not my vehicle. Whereas I know other people who are really great at that, and that's what they use it for. Some people may be the ones who just kind of connect other people. I think for me, it's always been about my creativity has been that space that I am an activist in. So that's what I can continue to kind of offer. And that's what I will always kind of do. I won't tweet as much. I definitely probably will not be tweeting that much. And then all my other social media platforms are probably more about kind of just engaging with like friends and kind of family, sometimes kind of sharing things that I'm kind of reading with. It's about kind of the interpersonal relationships. But if you're talking specifically about being political, you're going to find that stuff in my work. And that's why I kind of continue to push that. That's why I have to be clear about the things I say yes or no to, because I have a particular message I think I want to kind of get out. A lot of my work tends to kind of center around kind of Black experiences. And a lot of kind of my centering of my characters are Black women and Black men, because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in your experiences. I'm interested in your past and your present and your future. I'm interested like in your healing. I'm interested in like what we do with our pain and how our pain has kind of shaped us, So I have to kind of construct that space as like my activism, I've been very clear about that for me. So other people need to kind of find what are their forms for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what is the song that you are grooving to now that you're talking about healing and create a holding space for Black stories? And how do you keep up in terms of song and music?
you know, my music tastes tend to usually kind of go based on like what I'm feeling at the time. Like I'm the person who can either play like the same playlist for months at a time or like the same album, and it gives me peace. Like I don't have FOMO like that. I never have FOMO like that. I'm just like what works for me. So like the song that's been like on repeat, I've been listening to a lot of hip hop lately, and specifically a lot of female rappers. So there's a song called A Whole Lot of Money by Bia. And I think there's like a new remix at the minute with like Nicki Minaj. I just like it. I'm like, yes, this is just where we're at. Like, and it talks a lot about just getting yourself together, like making your own money. And I'm like, actually, that's probably the space, because maybe that's just the space that I'm at. You know, I'm like, I've had to think a lot about the last year and like living on my own and like the things that I've had to just accomplish on my own. And sometimes I think I don't praise myself enough. So I end up kind of creating these playlists that are just about like, you need to celebrate you.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes, absolutely. I think uh, maybe it's the society or a cultural context that make us get into a space where we're always waiting for praise to come from other places. And if you praise yourself, it's like you're being arrogant or you're too full of
Yeah.
yourself. But I think that's one of the things that this pandemic has taught me is like celebrate the little wins that you yourself have managed to accomplish, and even the things that you have managed to do. I think at some point for me, it was even just, just cheering myself for getting up in the morning and taking a bath or getting
Yeah.
up in the morning and turning up for that power walk with a friend or for that boot camp session, just, just celebrating
But you
you
have
and
to
the
do it.
things that you're doing.
Yeah.
you,
You definitely have to celebrate yourself. And like last week or the week before, my friends and I were sort of in a WhatsApp group, and we're talking about like all the things that we had accomplished, but then we kind of we mentioned them, but we hadn't like celebrated them, and we're like, why are we being so quiet about the things that we're doing? And we haven't actually made a point to kind of go, that's a great job. So what we ended up doing is we got together in Leeds, and I bought a cake, and I said, listen, what we're gonna do is we're gonna get like a whole bunch of like birthday candles, and we're gonna each light a candle for each thing that we've accomplished, and we're gonna celebrate that, because we're not doing it for ourselves. And like some other people may not necessarily be doing it for us, but we're gonna have like this whole, honestly, it was like this whole ritual where people kind of like took a candle, they mentioned what they'd accomplished, stuck it in the cake, and we just had this cake with just all these candles filled of all the things that we realized actually we just hadn't celebrated. It was like somebody had finished uni, and like got a master's degree but didn't say anything, or it was just like, what, I've had a really good week, and we just needed to say those things, because what we were doing is doing life and going from day to day to day to day. And when you do that, you don't get to kind of just stop and enjoy things. So we had our little ceremony, and like, we need to do this stuff more often.
Beautiful. I think I might copy that, not necessarily the cake and the candles, it'll be something. But I think definitely, verbally expressing your gratitude and appreciating yourself and the things that you're managing to accomplish does also something for your mental well-being,
Yeah, it does.
which brings me to my question in that how do you keep yourself grounded when you're going through a difficult time?
um I'm a crier, so like, I think I've had to learn not to um not to swallow things, and I've had to learn that being vulnerable doesn't necessarily mean that I am weak and failing, um because there is like release on the other side of that. So what I've had to learn how to do is first verbalize what is bothering me, and in doing so, allow, I guess also about the who's your community as well, and can you trust those people to be vulnerable with. So when I found kind of that community, and having to say, actually, today isn't a good day, and I need support in these areas, and or I just need to be heard, or I just need to be kind of comforted. That was like the first thing. Then the next thing is I have to learn how to ask for help, because I spend a lot of time going, I can do everything by myself, or I am just doing everything by myself. So I have to find those moments where I go, actually asking for help isn't the worst thing. So say those things, ask for those things, and get release. The other things that I'm learning how to do a lot more is, for example, like I started kind of taking care of plants and kind of getting more plants. And I think what that has done actually has taught me a lot about patience and like just calming down and having a ritual with them. And I wasn't massively like a kind of a plant person at all. I think it's sort of definitely kind of grown like in the last year. But that has become really kind of calming. And actually even just kind of having plants in the house is actually kind of really relaxing. I'm learning how to kind of enjoy more exercise and being at the gym or kind of just going out for walks. Because what happens, I think I'm very heady. I will overthink and overthink and overthink, and I'll overthink overthinking, you know? So I need to be doing things that allow me to actually just kind of give my mind a break. And I remember kind of going from like a space where creativity and writing used to be actually my therapy almost, to a space where it became like my career. So sometimes it doesn't feel as therapeutic. So I end up kind of developing like other skill sets. So like now I love crafting. And if I'm able to kind of do stuff with my hands, which means I'm not really thinking about it a lot. So that means that I can find kind of just decompress. But even actually just going to therapy, I do that too. And having actually a kind of a specific space where I can kind of actually begin to unpack, for example, ideas around like, why are you so hard on yourself? Because it's not like you're actually failing. You're actually probably doing a lot better than what you realize. But where does that come from? Where does your imposter syndrome kind of come from? Has been kind of really important kind of to do, you know? Yeah, so I think I just try to be kind of more disciplined with those things.
Absolutely. I remember a session that I had with my then therapist where I think I just sent them a message and I said, I need to have a conversation. I'm not coping. And then they said, can we have this conversation now? And then I started walking back. I was like, nah, let's not have it now. But anyway, we ended up having it 2 days later and we were talking, and then we started unpacking things. Then afterwards, she said, but do you realize that you've been doing so well? That you've been with all the things that have been going on in your space in your life, you have been coping very well. It's just that you got to a space where it felt like it was a lot, and you were not verbally expressing them and verbally expressing the things that were bothering you, or even just the things that were working on, the tools that you were also then figuring out in order to navigate a space that you thought, oh, I'm failing at everything. Things are just coming at me and I'm just reacting to that. We're kind of going towards the end of our conversation. I wish I could sit here and talk to you forever. I love listening to what you have to say, to what is on your mind. So what are the 2 things that you hate and the 2 things that you love, and the 2 things that you ate today so far?
What have I eaten today? I had croissants and avocados. So I had that.
I know you love avocados.
Everything just makes sense. What else have I? 2 things I love. Family, for sure. Ooh, even though they stress me out. Family though. Family, I love them. And I think friends actually. You know, they've genuinely been such a support system this last year and a half. So those 2. 2 things I hate. Liars. Why are you lying for? Just why? What's the purpose? And what else do I hate? People, bad timekeeping. But maybe that's also my issue around time, but like bad timekeeping. Why?
So you were annoyed with me, right? When I said, "May please have 30 more minutes."
I think it's even because you informed me. People who don't inform, I'm like, why? What do you think I'm doing? You think I'm sitting here doing nothing? just communication. That's all. That's all I'm asking.
Absolutely. And I think you it can also, I think there's certain little things that can easily set you off, Like even like you're saying, a person being late and you're busy, you're sitting there because you've cleared a headspace and even physical space just to have this meeting with this person, or even just to have whatever it is that you're planning with this person, and they don't turn up at the time. They probably turn 2 or 3 hours, and it's like, okay, so what am I supposed to do now with you?
No, I don't. I'm like, you gotta value my time. You have to value like
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
space. Yeah, I was late. You have
Exactly.
gone. I've left already.
I don't live here anymore, or I'm not there
I'm not
anymore.
anymore. I'm not there. I'm not available. Listen, I don't have the capacity. I'm telling you, that phrase will get you through a lot.
I like that. It should be a philosophy that is printed on tissues. I don't have the capacity.
I don't have the capacity. I'm sorry, but thank you though. Some of the time, say it like that.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And then to finish us off, what advice would you give to an aspiring playwright or director?
Um, study your craft. Like just study it, and that's it could be, whether or not you're reading, people writing about directing or playwriting, or you going to see or read like a whole host of different plays. Study it, study to see like what's out there, and like what you're interested in, and what ideas you kind of gain from that. Because I remember like my first play, some of the ideas around how boy in the play, like the jazz musician, kind of comes back to life in the play. That was based off another play I'd read, called The Memory of Water. And I wasn't quite sure like how you bring to life kind of these dead characters on stage. I read a whole bunch of different plays and saw how they did it, and then I just copied that. But I think also, like, in order for you to live a creative life, like, you have to be brave. Like, it's not always going to be easy, and it's not always going to be as exciting, but at least if you can be brave within that space, you're probably going to, like, step out of your comfort zone far more often than what you think you will be.
Absolutely, absolutely. Zodwa, thank you so much for taking the time. And though I was 30 minutes late, my apologies. To have this conversation with me, and I think someone out there is really going to appreciate what you have to say and how it's going to change their lives. So thank you so much.
Anytime, you're welcome.
All right.